Hello, can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can indeed, Evan. That all looks good.
Okay, cool.
So we'll just give it another minute or so just to let everyone come back from their wee break. Okay, everybody. So we've got our last keynote of the day. So there've been some really interesting, amazing talks so far. We've heard from an athlete just before. We've heard from sports psychologists. We've heard from students as well within this, and people with different aspects within research around coaching as well. So I think that builds on really nicely to our last keynote speaker, which is Coach Evan Burke. So just a little bit of Evan's spiel. Evan, you will know all this because I am reading most of this from your website, but I think that's probably just the best way to talk about Evan before he goes on to his talk. So Evan's an author, a keynote speaker around leadership coaching, hosts a podcast as well around leadership, and works with different teams and athletes around building winning cultures as well. So Evan's spent nearly 2 decades coaching elite athletes and leaders within top sports organizations, both within the NFL and the college football kind of systems in the States as well. So he now uses his unique coaching background to educate and inspire future leaders and performers, and corporate clients and organizations, and trying to look at the principles around leadership and learning from kind of coaches as well. So a little bit of background there for Evan, but I'll hand over to Evan, and I'm looking forward to hearing more.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and really excited to be here presenting to you guys. As you were just kind of highlighting, my career really kind of surrounds being a football coach, and then kind of using that experience as a college and professional football coach into the work that I do now as a speaker and as an author. And what I'm going to really kind of focus on today is my career as a coach. And I have a rather unique path to coaching, as a lot of you are probably familiar. Typically, coaches, especially in American football, are either sons of coaches or former professional or high-level college players. I was neither of these. I was a high school wrestler and a high school football player, but I was definitely not an athlete of any note or any star abilities. But I always loved sports, and I always really saw leadership through that lens of leading a sports team. So I'm going to take you guys through real quick just my career, and then I'm going to kind of highlight some tips and lessons that I've learned through my career. And then obviously any questions that you guys have about building a successful career or anything in my path, I'm happy to dig into in the fireside chat section. So you can kind of see here on the left side of the screen, my career timeline. The left side is really my career as a football coach. I started as a 4th grade football coach, was able to kind of progress in a very short amount of time. 6 years later, after starting as a 4th grade football coach, I was coaching in the NFL. And then about 6 years ago, I made the pivot from coaching on the field to more coaching off the field. So I still had a passion for working with people in leadership development, and I was able to use those experiences from my career into a lot of the work that I do now, which is really centered around career development, specifically for sports organizations and athletes, and consulting with high-level college and pro sports organizations around team building, leadership development, player development, and then, as you mentioned, my podcast and my book, which kind of, again, feeds into my previous experience. But we're going to start at the very beginning. And this is me, 20 years old, as a university student at the University of Colorado here in the US. I knew that I wanted to be involved in sports somehow. And I think around this time, I wanted to be involved in coaching, but I wasn't a player in college. I was just going to college as a student. But kind of leaning into this draw that I felt, I reached out to a local rec center and actually coached a fourth grade football team. At the time, I had a very strong vision. I wanted to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, or a big time college here in the US, but I didn't really know how to get there. And I didn't have anybody that I knew in coaching. So I figured I would start at the very bottom. And the very bottom of football is fourth grade football in the US. That's kind of the first time that you can actually put pads on and hit each other. This is us at the pizza party. Unfortunately, that season we were 0-6 in terms of our record. But if you guys know anything about fourth grade football, the pizza party at the end of the year is really the most important aspect of a fourth grade football season. And we absolutely knocked that out of the park. But even from this young age, and even from coaching fourth grade football, I was kind of starting to adopt this image for myself that I was a coach. People from the outside might have thought it was cute or fun that I was kind of pursuing this path, but in my mind, I was building the foundation that my career would be based on, even though I will fully admit in this picture, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea how to build a career as a coach. I just knew I needed to start somewhere, and fourth grade football was a great place to start, just as much as any other place. So this was kind of the humble beginnings to my coaching career. After that year, again, still a student at university, I started coaching at a local high school. And this is coaching freshman football, JV football, really kind of the players that aren't good enough to play at the high level varsity in high school. You're coaching those players. And it was a really great experience because you're really focused on the development of the players rather than, winning and losing. Obviously, we want to compete, we want to win. But at those levels, when you are dealing with players that really haven't developed, you really have to adopt a mindset that you are there to help develop the players. So this is me at 21 years old. I'm the co-offensive coordinator. So I'm calling plays here in Boulder, Colorado. You can see it's a very beautiful place to kind of coach with the mountain backdrop. But you're not really doing it in front of anybody. You're not necessarily on your career path in terms of a career. But again, I was building this foundation. So these were kind of the humble beginnings as a fourth grade coach and as a early high school coach that kind of laid this foundation for, again, developing that self-image as a coach and kind of the path that I was going to go on. So from being a high school coach and graduating college, I wanted to be a college coach, but I really didn't know how to do this. And I really didn't have any connections. I actually approached this high school, Fairview High School, to see if I could join the varsity coaching staff the following year. And they bypassed me to go hire somebody outside of the staff. So instead of staying in Boulder and staying at this same program that I had been at, it was obviously time to kind of like go out and find another place to coach. And this kind of led me on my path. I wrote letters to every single college in America. There was probably 120 colleges. I got 0 responses. And I actually was going to the city that I live in, which is Dallas, Texas, where I'm from. And there were 3 colleges here. I contacted those 3 colleges on a trip home just to see family, to ask if I could come up and visit them in their office. 2 of those schools said, do not come up here. We are not hiring. We're not interested in hosting you on any type of visit or meet and greet. But one of those schools was very open and invited me to come up to the office. This was SMU in Dallas, where I'm from. And so after college, I graduated and started my coaching career in college at SMU, Southern Methodist University. And this was again, starting at the bottom. bottom, working as a video, working in the video staff, working as an operations assistant. You are doing things like passing out the Chick-fil-A's, very less than glamorous jobs when you think about being a college coach. But I was so excited to be in a program, even though this was a losing program. This was not necessarily at the time, 2006, a program of any note. You can see here this picture. This is one of the hundreds of pictures that my parents have of the back of my head while I was coaching in college at Division I here in the US, and obviously very proud to be there. My parents were proud. They've always been very supportive of my coaching path. But again, you're not necessarily at the highest levels in terms of your influence within the program. You're just passing out Chick-fil-A's. But I can remember even during that early time, I was very dedicated and I was very committed. And I really had this attitude that I'm going to pass out Chick-fil-A's better than anybody in America. And just a note, I don't know if Chick-fil-A is popular in England, but it's basically, you know, a McDonald's. It's a fast food chicken sandwich restaurant. So, you know, I was very dedicated to passing out those meals to the players, knowing that would kind of lead to what was ever next. My attitude in terms of attacking this day, in terms of attacking this job that they were giving me. And I was very happy to be there. Very fortunate as well, because there was a coaching change during this time. Typically with coaching changes, the new coach will come in and get rid of the entire staff, regardless of who was there before or what connections are there. So after 2 years under Coach Bennett at SMU, I was able to stay on another 2 years with Coach Jones. And this was great because it kind of allowed for my progression to being an ops assistant, passing out the food as the players got on the bus, to eventually being on the field as a coach on both offense and defense. It was really kind of a dream come true. I was able to pursue my master's degree while I was there. And this is all 5 minutes from where I grew up. So it was a very special time. You can see here, this is at a spring game, kind of like the off-season, culmination of the off-season program for SMU. I'm here with my grandpa and my two brothers. It was just a very special time for me to be a part of this program. And as I mentioned, kind of developing my confidence as a coach and learning how to be a coach while still getting to do it in action. And like I said, this was a losing program. It had 30 years of losing before I got there, and actually got to see from 2006 being the worst team in America, 1-11 records, back-to-back seasons, to in 2009, this team was able to have a winning season for the first time in 30 years and go to the bowl game. And here I am with two of my good buddies, Coach Steve Stegall and Coach Adrian Clem, on the field at the Hawaii Bowl after we won the Hawaii Bowl championship. So it was just this very special time. I actually could have stayed another semester and finished my master's degree because I think I had like 2 or 3 hours left. And when I approached the coach about doing that, he informed me that he had already hired my replacement. So obviously kind of a blow, just because it was a special place for me and I wanted to stay and finish that program. But as happens in life, you know, it doesn't always go as planned. And I remember I was really down for about 24 hours. And then I made the decision that, okay, you know what? I'm going to take this opportunity. I think I was 26 years old at the time. And obviously had a good experience for 4 years coaching at high level college. I'm going to go for the NFL. I'm going to see if I can find a way to get in the door in the NFL. And this is how I kind of like started creating connections in the NFL, where I really had very few connections as a young coach. Again, not having played and not having a parent that was working in professional coaching. So what I did, even though I really didn't know a lot of people in the NFL, is I started to kind of reverse engineer how I would possibly get into the door at the highest level of football here in the States. And the way that I did this was, the first thing I did was I took my network. You can see here on the left side of the screen, and I filled out a spreadsheet. This is the actual spreadsheet that I had like filled out in 2009. And I had gone from 1970 to 2009. And I had manually gone in and filled out where every single coach that I knew that I had a personal connection to had been at during their career. And then I went to the NFL teams and I did that for every single employee on every single team in the NFL. So that's 32 teams times about 25 people in the NFL. So as you can kind of tell, I'm a huge organizational nerd. So this kind of leans into, I guess, my nerddom concerning organization and probably more than that. But what I started to do was I started to look at where I had a second degree connection. So you can kind of see here all the places that are highlighted in blue or orange are connections that I have with my network to these people in the NFL that I don't really know. But what I decided I was going to do was every place that I had a connection to a person in the NFL, I was going to write a handwritten letter to that person saying that I knew this person, this coach in my network, and that I wanted to connect with them because I wanted a job in the NFL. And the reason I wanted to do that handwritten is because I was kind of self-aware of who I was. I don't look, you can't really pick this up on Zoom, but I'm not really an intimidating figure, as you would kind of imagine a gruff American football coach to be. I'm not very physically intimidating, and I don't have a name of like somebody who had played in the league or somebody who you would know their father or a relative. So I had to stand out somehow. And I felt that letter writing was something that was always very personal to me and I was very passionate about. And that was the way that I was going to kind of start to reach out and kind of poke these people in the shoulder to see if there was an opportunity. And again, not really anything too groundbreaking here. This was kind of the sample letter that I had picked out. And it's very simple, just kind of reaching out to people. Hey, I know you're connected to this coach that I have worked with or that I currently work with. I'd love to meet you and get your advice on getting a job in the NFL. There were 450 connections I had in the NFL, and I wrote 450 handwritten letters. Obviously, you have to be very dedicated, very passionate about letter writing and kind of your path to trying to get into the NFL. But again, I was very committed, and this was something that I really wanted to give a good go at for a couple of months before I started to look at anything else. Out of those 450 letters, I ended up getting 12 responses. Not exactly a high click-through rate or a high rate of return, but out of those 12 responses, I ended up getting 3 interviews. And from those 3 interviews, I ended up getting a job offer with the Miami Dolphins. And this was in 2010. So I got to spend the 2010 NFL season with the Dolphins. But again, I was just getting my foot in the door. I got my foot in the door as a video intern. Now, I was not there to do video. I was not there to be an intern. I was there to be the head coach in 5 years. But what this really did was, instead of me coming in there and just saying, okay, I'm going to be a video guy, I'll kind of see what happens, is I started to go out and try and make connections in the building and try and let people know that they could count on me for things other than video. Let them know that I was here to be a coach, not necessarily just to be in the video office. So I started to kind of little by little, day by day, reach out to coaches in the building, reach out to different employees in the building, and just kind of start building relationships, and also let them know that I'm not here just to do video. I'm here to be a coach. This eventually led me to working with a certain section of the coaching staff. The special teams is what we call it, and it's really the kicking game in American football. And I started to work with that staff kind of behind the scenes, without anybody knowing. A couple of things happen. We lose a couple of games and then end up firing the special teams coordinator. They promote his assistant, and then I somehow get promoted into that assistant's role. So I kind of went from being a video intern at the beginning of the year to week 4 of the season. They're firing the guy that I'm kind of covertly working with, and I end up getting promoted into the special teams assistant role for the remainder of the season. So it was a really special time. It's obviously a very intense environment when we're talking about coaching. coaching. I mean, NFL coaching, I was probably in the building at 6 a.m. and I was probably not leaving typically till 11 or 12 at night when we were in season. So we would probably do that for 4 or 5 days leading up to each Sunday football game. So it's a very intense environment, but again, a very special experience, and obviously learned a ton. But as I've highlighted, things don't always go as planned. And 2 weeks to the end of the season, they bring in another coach to help with this special teams unit. And that coach just so happens to be the firstborn son of the head coach that's in the building. And I just had a feeling the way they were kind of presenting it to me and introducing him, that this was my replacement. They were basically bringing him in the building for me to train him to replace me. And I remember obviously being very upset about this. I had worked very hard to get to this point, and they're asking me to train basically my replacement without telling me. And you kind of come to these moments in your career where you have to make a decision about how you are going to proceed. And obviously, this was a huge moment of adversity, but who am I as a coach? Who is Evan Burke as a coach, and what do I stand for? And this is really kind of a principle that I've tried to embody throughout my entire career, which is leaving footsteps of excellence. And yes, they might be bringing this person in here, and it seems to me like they're definitely about to replace me. But how am I going to react? Am I going to steal all the information? Am I going to hoard the information and neglect this person? Or am I going to stand up in this moment and I'm going to train my replacement to the best of my abilities? Not because it's what's best for me, but it's because this is how I would want to be treated. And this is what I stand for. I stand for showing up every day, giving my absolute best for the betterment of the team. And if this is what I'm asked to do, even though I may not like it, this is what is required for us to perform at our highest level. This is what is required when we're talking about mental toughness, to give up your own personal success for the potential success of the team. And so I always, a lot of times when I'm talking, especially to athlete audiences, my message a lot of times is kind of, what do you stand for? And it's great to kind of define what your values are and to say, oh, well, this is who I am. But really, these moments of adversity really give you an opportunity to show the world and everybody you work with what you're really about. And so even though this was a failure, and it took me a long time to kind of realize this is a moment I'm actually really proud of, because even though it kind of spelled the end of my time in Miami, instead of me kind of behaving in a way that maybe wasn't the best image of myself, I stood up in that moment and I, as I said, left the footsteps of excellence behind me. And so after that, after being replaced by the head coach's son, I went on to coach at a school here in Texas. It was a Division II school, so a lower level college. It was a great experience. I was there for 3 seasons, actually another losing program or a program that had had a history of losing that we were able to kind of turn around. And this was really special, but it really kind of led me to my next step, even though on paper, this was a very big step down from professional to this Division II school out in West Texas, middle of nowhere. It was really a great opportunity for me to learn a lot and to obviously continue to develop as a coach. And, you always want to be kind of moving towards the next step, or you're always kind of preparing for that next opportunity. And so I ended up getting an opportunity to go to one of the best colleges in America, not only in terms of football, but also in terms of stature and location. And this was UCLA. And I want to kind of just walk you through real quick how I ended up doing this. Again, I was coaching a low-level coach in Division II at McMurray University. I had a friend that I coached with previously at SMU that worked at UCLA. And I had a coach that I really admired that was on the UCLA staff. His name is Noel Mazzoni. He's actually here in the little virtual reality set. This was just a picture I had in the archives of my phone. But the reason I'm showing this to you is this is the room that the offensive staff room at UCLA. And so actually I set it up to where I went out to LA to visit UCLA, to visit my buddy who coached at UCLA. But I asked him in preparation of going out there that I really want to interview Noel Mazzoni. I want to interview, this is a guy that I really respect. I want to ask him a bunch of questions. Over here on the right side of the screen, yes, I'm such a nerd that I take photos of like all my notes and digitally store them in a digital library. But these are the actual notes that I had written out that I wanted to ask Noel Mazzoni in this interview. And so I go out to UCLA to visit my friend during spring break. He sets it up to where I can meet Coach Mazzoni, and I walk into this offensive staff room, and I've got my portfolio here, and I open it up. Coach Mazzoni, thank you so much for meeting me. I just had a bunch of questions. I've been following you for so long. And before I could even get my first question out on this kind of pseudo informational interview, Coach Mazzoni goes, "Oh, you coach with Coach Mummy at McMurray University, right? Oh, yes. Oh, you guys run the air raid. What do you guys do when you're faced with this defense?" I was like, "Oh, me? Okay, well, let me show you." So I get up here on these whiteboards. You can kind of see in this picture, it's a whole room just full of whiteboards, blank whiteboards at the time. And I just start drawing up. Oh, okay, well, if they do this, we're going to do this. And then if this happens, we're going to do this. Oh, that's really interesting. What happens if you guys get this type of a defense? Or what happens if you're in this section of the field? And so instead of me getting a chance to interview a coach that I really respected, he was interviewing me. What did we do at this place? What did we do in this certain situation or against this certain defense? And for 40 minutes, I stood up there on that board, drawing up all these plays. And after about 40 minutes, he goes, "Well, great to meet you, Evan. This was really great. Learned a lot. And yeah, hit us up next time you're in LA." And he gets up and walks out the room. And I can remember even to this day, like being disappointed in that meeting because I didn't get a chance to ask any of my questions. I didn't get any of my questions answered. And I basically just spent the whole time talking about football and drawing up plays. Well, fast forward a year later, they're looking for a quarterback coach at UCLA. My name comes up. And Coach Mazzoni is in the staff room when my name comes up and says, "Oh, yeah, I've talked to this guy. This guy's really sharp. If we could get this guy on staff, it would be a huge addition." And that led me to UCLA. And so I just kind of share that with you guys because I think putting yourself in the right place, meeting the right people is a big part of success in coaching. I could have easily gone out to LA. I could have just hung out with my buddy. He could have gone to work and I could have gone to the beach and we could have met up for dinner. But I was there to kind of take advantage of my spring break. But I was really there to meet Coach Mazzoni and kind of like continue my development as a coach. And as so happens, he ended up interviewing me. And thankfully, I knew enough about, coaching and kind of offensive game planning that I could seem semi-intelligent when I was presenting to him. And so you don't really know when these opportunities are going to come. So you definitely need to stay ready, but you also need to put yourself in the right places because if I had not been in that room or I had not manufactured a way to get in that room, I wouldn't have been brought up as a potential person to work with the quarterbacks going to UCLA. So, even this potentially disappointing meeting ended up being the actually best thing that could have happened to me in terms of the next move in my career. I go out to UCLA. I moved from middle of nowhere, West Texas to Santa Monica, California, just the absolute greatest place to live, in my opinion. Perfect weather, an absolutely awesome university. And I got to work with two really great quarterbacks that were both drafted into the NFL. So everything seems amazing, right? Like I'm at UCLA, I'm at a great place. I live in a great place. I'm working with world-class athletes. But something was off. Even though that the Rose Bowl, this stadium that UCLA plays in, was really kind of like definitely a North Star or a Mecca that I had kind of like put in my mind in terms of my coaching, I wasn't fulfilled and I wasn't happy. And so I made the difficult decision after 2 years at UCLA that I was going to leave coaching. And quite honestly, I'll tell everybody out there, I think having a really strong North Star in your coaching career is vital because when you're in those tough points or you're in those tough moments, what did I fall back on? I fell back on my inner circle, my family here for one, that you can see in this picture. And I fell back on my North Star, which was to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, to be a high-level college head coach. And that fueled me through 12 years of ups and downs in coaching. And it fueled me up until the moment that it didn't. And I can still remember walking into a meeting room. As you guys can probably pick up from this presentation, I'm a huge nerd. I take notes in every single meeting I've ever been in. And I just walked into a meeting one day, and I can't explain it, but I just didn't want to take notes in that meeting. And that feeling grew throughout the day. And it just kind of like all hit me at once. Like, I don't know if this is the life that I want for myself. And I think this is also really important. I didn't understand this as a young coach. I was just so focused on being the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. But what you don't realize, and I'm speaking specifically about American football here, but I think it applies to a lot of other sports as well. It is such a lifestyle. You are really adopting a lifestyle. And particularly in college and pro, you're moving every 2 years. You don't get a say on where you're moving. A lot of times you can be at the pro level, and then the very next year you're at a low level college. You really have very little say over a lot of aspects of your life. And so if I'm at a place that I love living, and I'm at a school that I love, and I'm working with the exact type of people that I want to work with, but I'm still not fulfilled, at what point do I become fulfilled? In 12 years down the road? And so I started to kind of contemplate these questions over the last few weeks of the 2015 season. And I made the difficult decision to leave coaching. It was actually not difficult to make the decision. I kind of just felt it was the right time. But I will share this, that the thing that I worried about most was telling grandpa that I was leaving coaching, that telling my family that I was leaving coaching, these people around me that had been there for me and supported me through this incredible journey that I was on. I was more worried about telling them that I was leaving coaching than actually leaving coaching. And as it turns out, if you build a strong inner circle and you have the right people surrounding you, they don't care about where you are on your journey. They are there to support you. They're there not supporting me just because I'm a coach. So that was something that I just distinctly remember. It wasn't a difficult decision to leave. It was difficult to tell people. And as it turns out, nobody really cared, right? Like, they're there and they want what's best for me. And this kind of led me on a journey over the last 5-6 years. And I'm going to be honest. I thought my career was all about climbing a mountain. Like, I have to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys and I have to climb this mountain. And what I kind of realized over that 12 years of coaching and kind of in the subsequent 5-6 years is that life is not about climbing the mountain. It is about understanding that life is climbing a series of mountains. It's like I almost got to the pinnacle of the mountain I was trying to climb, and I started to see that there's actually a mountain range of mountains to climb. And so, I've been very fortunate to kind of have these experiences in football. These were not necessarily setbacks just because I didn't get a chance to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. I got the chance to see the inner workings of how great coaches and great organizations operate on a daily basis. And that's really what I'm most passionate about. And that's what I speak about. And that's what I write about. And that's what I talk about on my podcast. And so using those setbacks, there are no setbacks, just using those setbacks as setups for what is next. And so I've been very fortunate to climb a couple of mountains, and I'm very excited about what other mountains are out there. So whether it's football or writing a book or working with pro esports teams or working with high level college athletes, I'm always looking for that next mountain to climb. And also just that mentality that regardless of how things shake down, there are no setbacks, just setups. So a couple of tips real quick, and then we'll get to the Q&A. I think 3 areas that you really have to think about when you're talking about your career is managing yourself, managing your team as a coach, and then managing your career. So starting with managing yourself, I'm real big on alignment. I know a lot of people like to say vision, and I did talk about North Star earlier, but having a strong vision or a North Star doesn't matter unless you have a process and a path to achieving that. So you have to create alignment. It's not just vision. Aligning your daily activities and your attitude with your vision is really key. So I think alignment is number one. I think also self-image and worldview. How do you view yourself? And how do you view the things that happen to you? We all are probably have people in our networks or in our classes that everything is the worst thing to ever happen. Everything is always bad. Everything is always terrible. That's their worldview. I really encourage young coaches, especially, adopt that self-image of yourself that I'm the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. I'm here now. This is where I am now, but this is who I am. This is the role that I'm going towards, and this is who I'm becoming on a daily basis. And then I also think mindset, right? Like, how are you going to pass out the Chick-fil-A's? How are you going to pass out the bag lunches to the team? Are you going to worry about the role that you have, or are you going to do the absolute best in your role right now because you know that it's a setup for what's coming? And just understanding that adversity is inevitable. I've got up here, if you can kind of see, it's kind of small, but it's the resilience resume. Every time I've had a setback in my career, it's always led to the next great thing. Right? Oh, I passed over for a job at Fairview High School, got me led directly to me getting a job at SMU in college. Oh, I don't get the SMU promotion that I really wanted, and I don't get to finish my master's degree there on time. It leads to me getting a job in the NFL, right? So this ability to kind of like take that resilience and kind of turn it into something good. Obviously, like I said, this has a lot to do with your worldview and how you view the things that happen to you. There are no setbacks, just setups. Managing your team. I think the three biggest things that I've seen in terms of the coaches that I've worked with and the interviews that I've done through my podcast is these three soft skills: leading with authenticity, leading with empathy, and leading with vulnerability. These are three key things. I think when we're talking about being authentic is very important in coaching. You can model a lot of coaches, but you don't want to emulate them, right? Like, you want them to influence you. You don't want to just become another them. I also think eliminating your ego, understanding that as a coach, it's all about the players. It's not about you. It's not about, oh, this is my role. Again, team success as a prerequisite to personal success. So eliminate your ego and be willing to admit your mistakes. I think early in my career, I wanted them to know that I had all the answers. People and players today don't want you to have all the answers. They don't want perfect leaders. They want human leaders. And then the talent paradox. I talked about this in my book. I think a lot of people in sports think that talent is what wins. And really, it's not talent that wins. Talent is essential to success, but success is not determined by talent, right? So you definitely need talent to have success, especially the higher levels that you go in sports in general. But the people that have the most success in sports and the teams that have the most success are never the most talented teams. They're always the teams and the people with the most character. And then managing your career. Obviously, as you guys can kind of pick up, networking is a very big thing for me. I think number one, find your people. Regardless of what your background is or how you got into coaching, find the people that get you and that you want to learn from, right? So find those people, start to build your network and kind of the inner circle of your network. Find the coaching stars. So regardless of what world you exist in terms of sports, find the kind of the rising stars in coaching. And I've mentioned a couple of times, build a strong inner circle. Make sure you have a good support system of people that can support you, both obviously in your development, but obviously that can be there for kind of the emotional tough times. This was really important for me, and I think is important for any young coach. And then develop those mentors and advisors, which kind of goes in line with all three of these. Put your face in the place, go to where the people are that you want to work with. I thought, I was a high school coach. I can't possibly go to this next level. And I continued to think of that until I was forced to go to that next level. Right. And so be bold and put your face in the place and get around the people you want to work with and start developing relationships with those people. You might reach out to 10 people at a certain place. 9 of them might ignore you. but all you need is one. So go put your face in the place. Obviously, the persistence and the art of the follow-up. And then I think also just building trust when you get in the building. You want people to know when you walk in every single day that you're going to be relentlessly resourceful, and don't be afraid to show your passion for coaching and development on your career path. Okay, I know that's a lot. Let me stop here. If you guys want to contact me, I've got my email here. You can find me on Twitter or any social media at Coach Evan Burke. And guys, feel free to check out my podcast, The Highest Level with Evan Burke. It's a sports leadership podcast. I interview a lot of coaches and athletes on how they build winning teams and achieve peak performance. And then you can check out my book, Finding Intangibles, available on Amazon. And then you can also sign up for my newsletter on my website, coachevanburke.com/newsletter. And I'll stop here and throw it back to you guys, and happy to take any questions.
Amazing. Thanks so much for that, Evan. That was really interesting to get your insight into coaching. And just from what you're saying there, I'm looking forward to some success in the future, because I'm talentless and I've been rejected a number of times. So I think good things ahead for me, I reckon. But hey, well, I've got some questions, but before I actually ask any, we've got a lot of people who listen to that. So it'd be great to throw it open to the floor and see what questions people have out there for you. So if anyone's got any questions, then feel free to let us know and ask Evan.
I have a question, if that's okay.
Excellent.
Hi, Evan. Great talk.
Howdy.
You mentioned a couple of times that you joined teams when they had a history of losing, and while you were there, they turned that around. I was just wondering what you did, or maybe what you noticed within the teams that led to them turning that around and beginning to win.
Yeah, great question. I could do another 45 minutes on this for sure. I'm very passionate about this subject, but I think like when it comes down to it, I think obviously when you are talking about programs that have kind of a culture of losing, there is kind of like this overall feeling that permeates the program. And that is very tough to deal with, right? Because as I was talking about worldview earlier, every time something bad happens, it's almost like everybody in the program kind of like slumps their shoulders. Oh, here we go again. So I think like one of the first things you need to do is kind of start to just change the way that people are thinking. This is obviously very tough to do kind of like on the fly, but if you are intentional about it, you can kind of like start that from, obviously a new coaching staff coming in the building or the start of a new year. I think the other thing that people kind of discount, and obviously leads kind of into my book, is the power of the people. Right. So in sports, a lot of times we talk about like, you need to get the right guys on the bus. You need to get the wrong guys or gals off the bus, and you need to get the right guys or gals in the right seats. And a big part is making the tough decisions of like saying, these are the new standards. This is how we're going to operate. And you have to have the ability to establish accountability to those new high standards. And so those are some of the commonalities that I've seen, is that those coaches come in and they set those high standards and they make the tough decisions when there are opportunities to get rid of players. I'm just as much of an advocate for players as the next person, and especially when we're talking about talented individuals. But talent is not going to turn around a losing culture. It is going to kind of start with the mindset and the people that you start to bring in to build the team and to build the coaching staff. So I could definitely do another 35 minutes on this question in particular, but I think a lot of times it comes down to kind of establishing that discipline and accountability within the program and the way that you do things day to day. And then secondly, making the tough decisions to get rid of the people that don't want to do things the way that you're prescribing, and also just promoting the people that are going to fall in line with the new level of accountability and discipline.
Yeah, great answer, but yeah, really, really interesting question that I thought as well. I know Max has got his hand up. If got a question, Max?
Yes. Oh, okay. I've got myself unmuted. Thanks, Evan. That was a really fascinating talk. I actually had a different question in mind, but hearing you answer that, I've got now a question as a follow-up to that, if that's okay. Those athletes who are sort of ambivalent, or when you're going through that culture change and you're trying to make a change to that environment, and you've got those ambivalent athletes or athletes who may be in the wrong part of the bus, how do you as a coach decide, okay, we need to get these guys off the bus, or actually this is a guy who we can maybe shuffle around the bus and keep on the bus? Like, how do you make that decision? And what's your sort of thought process behind that?
Yeah, so these are very intricate situations that occur, right? And so each situation could obviously be different, but I think the way that I would go into a situation like that and start approaching it is you need to understand kind of like what you stand for and where each player is. Look, the reality is the higher levels that you go on or that you go up, whether it's high level college or the pros, there's a greater tolerance the greater the talent. That's just the reality of being in those high level sports. But I think ultimately when it comes down to is it's like, is this person being malicious? Is this person like going out of their way to try and undermine the culture that we're trying to build? Or do they just not know? And I think as a young coach, I would be very quick to be like, oh, Max is not falling in line. Like, let's get rid of Max. I'm tired of looking at his face in the meeting room. Well, like, is that person behaving like that because that's who they are, or are they behaving like that because they don't know any better? And so a big part of this when we're talking about turning around the culture is not only getting the wrong guys out. And when I say that, it's like people that are pieces of crap, pardon my language. Like if they're a piece of crap, then like you probably need to make a difficult decision and get rid of them, or not a difficult decision and get rid of them. But there's other people that are just behaving a certain way because the culture has been such. Like, we've been losing here for 30 years. We don't know any better. I wasn't born the last time that this team won. So do you just get rid of all the people that aren't falling in line? That's kind of the role of being a coach. You have to come in and you have to make them believe and kind of buy in to what you're selling in terms of your vision, in terms of the way that you're going to do things. The way that you start to do that is obviously piece by piece. This is like, as I like to say, small wins. We're focusing on small wins. Like at SMU, they've got 30 years of losing. They don't even know how to show up and meet the right way, right? Like they don't show up with notebooks. They don't show up with pens. They're not taking notes. They don't care. They're sleeping. Okay. We need to learn how to meet the right way before we can even like think about winning the conference on the field. Now that seems like a very small thing, but over time, and let's just say like a spring period in college football is like 30 days, you have like 15 practices. Over those 30 days, like, yes, we want to get things accomplished on the field, but like, we really want to walk out of here with these guys understanding what it looks like to meet at the highest level, or what it looks like to practice with the effort that we want. So the way that you start doing this is you look for opportunities to promote people in front of the group that you can trust, right? Regardless of what their stature is on the team. Now, a lot of times if you're coaching high school, you don't get a chance to choose, or you can't get rid of some people, right? But like sometimes at these higher levels, what's really special is when your best player is a representation of what your culture is. Not every team can do that, right? So it can't always be your best player, but let's just say you even have somebody out of on a football team, there's like 100 and 120 people. Let's just say like player number 85 in terms of talent and skill is doing things the right way in practice. He's doing things the right way in a drill. Like the coach that I was with at SMU would always make it a point, regardless of who the player was, regardless of who it was to put them up in front of the entire team on film and be like, oh my gosh, look at Max here. I want everybody to watch Max Stone's effort on this play. Look at his full speed. This is the effort that we want. Max, this is great. Okay, that seems like a very small thing. Max is the 85th best player on our team. Like, who really cares? But what you're doing is you're starting to like send a message to the team is like, this is what we value. This is what's important. We don't care about your talent. We don't care about your skills. What we care about is this effort, this level of effort in practice. And so little by little, players start to pick up on that. And first, it's the guys that kind of don't really know if they're good or bad. And you start to kind of create this influence small win by small win, to where after 30 days, everybody shows up with a notebook. Everybody shows up with a pen in hand, ready to take notes. So I start getting super fired up about this and wanted to tell stories. But I think like the bottom line is you need to find the type of behaviors that are going to represent the turnaround in the culture and in the team that you want. And then when you start to see that in the players, you need to commend that and you need to promote that in front of the group so that everybody understands these are the behaviors that are going to lead to us having success down the line.
That's excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah, great question, Max. Thank you. So there's a question in the chat from John Wise. So John asks, are there commonalities between the successful coaches in your network, such as Jeff Reinbold and Norm Mazzone, etc.?
Yeah, and so I think one of my favorite questions is always like, what is success, right? Like, is success having certain jobs, or is success having the ability to coach and lead with influence? I mean, I guess I'll answer that in terms of my experiences. Like, I think there's a combination, right? Because when we're talking about high level coaching, we are talking about getting these jobs. We are talking about having sustained levels of success at highly competitive places. So I think like one of the things that I see is, number one, all those coaches know who they are. The coaches that struggle are the coaches that are trying to be something that they're not. The coaches that are, I worked for this great coach at this previous place, and everybody thinks I should have all the answers because I worked with this coach. So let me just behave like I think this coach would behave. Those coaches never do well. Coaches I've worked with and coaches that you see now in professional sports. The coaches that do great are the coaches that understand who they are and understand who they aren't, and can lead with that authenticity, like I said. And I think the other two things I kind of alluded to earlier a few slides ago, they have the ability to admit their mistakes in front of the team. A very small thing, but it was a very vast difference in the good coaches that I was around and the coaches that were bad that I was around. The bad coaches that I worked with in my career had a tendency to never admit their mistakes, never say that I called the wrong play. It's always somebody else's fault. Well, that's not the way the world works, and that's not realistic. The best coaches, the very best coaches in professional sports, all have the ability to stand in front of their team and say that they made a mistake in it. And again, that's leading with that vulnerability. And I think also the other thing is they have the ability to eliminate their ego. We all have a little bit of an ego as a coach or as a player. I don't think that's necessarily bad to have a little bit of that. There's maybe an element where you need some of that, but what you really need to do, especially when you're leading the team as the head coach, is you have to have the ability to eliminate your ego. It is not about you. It is not about you looking good in the press conference. It's not about you looking good after the game. It is about us. It is about this team. And if you can lead that way, lead with that understanding that is about all the other people, and it has nothing to do with you, and you can eliminate that ego, that is one of the common themes that you see in all the great professional coaches that I've studied. So again, leading with authenticity, vulnerability, and empathy are kind of those three areas, I think.
All right, that's really refreshing to hear, I think. Any more questions for Evan from the floor? I've got a question for you, Evan. I mean, you said about notes. I've got loads of notes here written down, okay, but I'll only ask you maybe one or two questions. But I'm
flattered.
So you talked about these multiple rejections and applying and going to these different colleges and just putting your name forward. But where did that passion or motivation come from that allowed you to kind of persist when you were getting, knocked back and not even a letter back? And where did that, alongside that passion and motivation, but where did that confidence come from that you could even say, right, I want to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys? Where did that confidence come from when you're getting these setbacks?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is my parents. I'm very fortunate to have two amazingly loving parents that have supported me not attached to, my successes or the results that I've achieved. And, even I can remember I think I was 21. My dad had taken me on like a father-son trip to Vegas. And I was in business school at Colorado. I was kind of doing this coaching thing. And I told him during this trip, he asked me what I was going to do after college. And I kind of told him, I was like, I think I want to be a coach. Probably for somebody outside of sports was probably like a little terrifying for my dad to hear. And I found out years later that he was terrified, but he never let me know. And the next week after I got home, he had sent me like a box of like 13 or 15 books of like great coaches and books on coaching. And so I was always very I always had an incredibly supportive inner circle, specifically, my parents. And I think they gave me that confidence, and it was probably not justified at the time. But this feeling that like, oh, well, I want to do this. Why would I not set my sights at the absolute highest level? Because that's possible, right? Everything that I've experienced in my life and my personal life has led me to believe that all of this is possible. So why put limits on myself? And I think that was a very big thing for me, is not viewing it necessarily as something that was impossible, but very much like, this is the lane that I want to be in, and this is how I want to go about it. And where do I want to end up? I want to end up at the very top. So I don't know necessarily where that vision came from. I think ultimately, like, sports has always been something I've been super passionate about. I've loved sports just like any other sports fan out there. And I think that for me, I always viewed team building, leadership, management through the eyes of sports. And kind of funny how now that's kind of the lens in which I teach when I'm speaking to groups and speaking to teams and teaching people. Like, this is the lens that I use to teach all these lessons. So it's really kind of the things that I was really nerding out about growing up, about leadership, and then combining that with sports. And I think that's kind of like where the sports coaching came in. I was always super passionate about sports, but I wasn't a great athlete. So I also kind of felt maybe that there was a part of me that I didn't really get a chance to have the experiences as an athlete that I always strive for growing up. And so maybe I could do those through coaching. And I was obviously fortunate enough to kind of work hard and be in the right place at the right time multiple times to kind of have this incredible journey from youth sports coaching to the NFL in a very short period of time. So I can't really pinpoint where it came from, but just something that was kind of like always maybe geared towards my personality and my own personal experiences. And as I mentioned, like, parents that supported me throughout everything that I've done.
Well, as somebody who researches social support, Evan, I always love to hear an answer like that, So that's really interesting. Has anyone else got a question for Evan? If not, I've got one last one to ask, but if anybody else has got a better question, please do ask.
I've got another question, if that's okay. I was wondering, maybe reflecting back over your career and where you are now, do you think not having that football background was a challenge or a gift as to where you've ended up? Has it helped you or hindered you?
Great question. I think, speaking from a purely coaching advancement point of view, it definitely hindered me. Like, you can't deny, especially here in America, when you look at coaching in college and in the pros, there is a ton of nepotism. There is a ton of, oh, well, I know this person, so regardless of how qualified they are, I'm familiar with this person's name, or this person played for me 15 years ago, or I know this person's dad. I experienced it time and time again, and was the result of a lot of the setbacks I experienced in my career. So I don't necessarily think it's like something in terms of coaching advancement and the career path that was helpful. But to your point, I think that you're kind of asking about, like, it does. I think it took me a long time to appreciate the uniqueness of my path. And I think now I'm at a place that I am very proud of my path, whereas I don't think it was like that. I don't think it was like that when I left coaching. I think it was something that I always kind of like shied away from. I didn't want people to know that I started as a 4th grade football coach. Why would I not be proud of that? Like, I should have been extremely proud of that. I should have let everybody know, oh, you know, everybody else is like the son of a coach and everybody else like played high level college or pro ball. Like, I don't belong here, but yet I'm here. Like, what does that say about me? And I wish that I would have, not necessarily like for other people to know, but that I would have been more proud of that fact. Not that I wasn't proud of it, but it was something that I definitely like kept from people, because I didn't want them to have the perception of like, oh, so you're just a youth coach, you're just a high school coach. But I obviously, reflecting back now, it's a key piece to my journey, and I think also made my journey, right? Like that is something, that type of building that resilience over that period of time, I didn't quite recognize it in the moment, but I think when I look back and I think about like over time, it definitely kind of started to build that resilience around the way that I viewed myself as a coach and the path that I was on. Oh, I went from 4th grade football to the NFL in 6 years. I'm pretty sure I can figure this out. You know, very difficult for a young 26-year-old who's trying to figure out coaching on top of like navigating the path, to kind of have that appreciation for that I definitely have now. So it's really interesting how that has kind of evolved in my mind over time, where initially it was something I was just ashamed of and didn't want people to know about, to where now I'm extremely proud of that fact. And like, I think that's a part of my journey. And I think that's a part of obviously my message, but also who I've become as a leader and as a speaker and as an author.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay,
Yeah,
well,
thank you. Great question.
yeah, that's well, been some excellent questions I think throughout, and if anyone does, we'll kind of wrap up there with Evan, just because I'm thinking for timing, which is actually spot on. And so great job there, Evan. And on behalf of all of us, thank you so much for giving up your time there, and definitely offering some different alternatives to some of the things we've been speaking about today. So thanks a lot for that.
Oh, thank you guys so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Good man. And yeah, if anybody wants to get in touch with Evan, there's his contact details there, and I'm sure he'd welcome any of those approaches. Marvelous. So I'll just hand back to Tracy and to Amelia, and they're going to look to wrap up what's been a really wonderful day, I would say, from my perspective. So I'll hand over to, there you go. That's the picture that we want to finish on.
That's not my dog, but I would like it to be.
Dog.
So thank you very much, everyone. That was a great talk to finish on, Evan. Going from, I would say my sister was a very good footballer, but not a very good coach, whereas I had to work hard at being a good footballer, well, soccer player, which meant I was a better coach because I knew what it was like to not be very good. Whereas my sister was like, why can't you just ping the ball from here to here? I don't understand. So yeah, I could relate to some of the things that you're talking about. But I just want to wrap up before I pass you over to Amelia to do the final tidy up, and to say thanks for everyone for attending.